Even saying that out loud feels like I'm trying to warn myself in hindsight. Like leaving a note for a version of me that still has a chance to walk away. But I didn't walk away. I sat down. I pressed play and I watched something that never should have existed. This wasn't an episode anyone was supposed to see. But we did. The thing about lost media is that most of the time it's boring. Old commercials, half-finished pilots, maybe some corny PSA cartoons that were pulled because a sponsor went bankrupt. There's a whole community of people who treat lost episodes like holy relics, chasing whispers across the internet for the thrill of finding something unseen. But this wasn't just unseen. This was hidden. The file, or tape, or whatever you want to call it, looked wrong from the very first second. The one I got my hands on was a rip, but even that rip carried the weight of something older. Grainy, distorted, like it had been duplicated a dozen times before it finally reached me. The folder it came in had no metadata, no timestamps, nothing to tell me where it had been. Just a single file with a label burned into its name. SpongeBob episode, do not watch. That's not me being dramatic. That's exactly what it said. Whoever had the original tape must have scrawled those words across the sticker in rushed handwriting. And whoever digitized it thought it was clever to keep the warning intact. At first I laughed. Do not watch is the fastest way to make sure somebody like me does watch. But the longer I stared at the file name, the more it started to feel less like a dare and more like a plea. I know what you're thinking, why even bother? Why not just delete it, burn it, pretend it never existed? I've asked myself that 100 times since. But here's the truth. I've always had a weakness for this kind of thing. Creepy rumors about banned episodes. Internet threads about shows slipping hidden frames past censors. Whispers of animators trying to smuggle in forbidden jokes. It's the curiosity economy. Once you hear about something you're not supposed to see, your brain won't stop chewing on it until you've looked for yourself. And if you've heard the rumors about a missing SpongeBob episode, I'm here to tell you they're real. I don't know who first whispered about it or how far back the story goes. Some say it was made as a joke. Some say it was a message from an animator on his last day. Others say it was never meant for Nickelodeon at all. That it was something else, something that used SpongeBob's skin like a mask. What I can tell you is this: the tape, or file, or whatever, wasn't normal. The colors bled at the edges before the episode even started, like the world inside the screen was already broken. The audio hissed in a way that made me feel like there was someone breathing on the back of my neck. I hadn't even pressed play and already the atmosphere was wrong. It wasn't just the label. It wasn't just the rumors, it was the weight. Holding it, or in my case opening the folder and hovering over the thumbnail, felt like standing on the edge of a roof. Toes dangling, wind pulling you forward. And when I finally pressed play, when the screen went black and the first flicker of distorted color filled the room, I swear I felt the air change, heavier. As if the world was holding its breath with me. I should stop here. I should say, don't go looking for it, and close the story before it really begins. But then again, if you've made it this far, you probably wouldn't stop any more than I did. That's the danger of lost things. They don't stay buried, so if you're still curious, if you're still thinking, maybe it's all an urban legend, let me explain. How we even got our hands on it in the first place. People always ask me how something like this even shows up. Lost tapes don't just fall into your lap. At least not the kind that make you question if you should have touched them at all. The truth is, It didn't feel like a discovery at first. It felt like a glitch in the ordinary. One of my friends, Josh, was the one who found it. He was scrolling through this old Nickelodeon forum, the kind where ex-employees trade stories about lost pilots and production gossip. Most of the time it's dull. Arguments about what year SpongeBob switched to digital ink, debates about who voiced some background character. But that night Josh DM'd me with a link, no subject line. Just, "You need to see this." The thread had been deleted within minutes of him sending it. But the cached page still loaded, and at the center of it was a dead link to a file dump. The poster had gone by a throwaway handle, "Retired Cell," and their entire message was one sentence. They tried to wipe it, but things like this don't go away. Attached below was a reference to a SpongeBob episode number that didn't exist on any production schedule. Every other episode was accounted for except this one. It was like a gap in the record, a blank spot in an otherwise perfect grid. That was our first warning. Of course, we didn't take it that way. To us, it felt like a gold mine. Lost media hunters dream of stuff like this, an untitled, undocumented episode, apparently hidden by the studio itself. We weren't scared. We were thrilled. It got stranger when the file finally arrived. Josh pulled it from some archive link buried in an encrypted folder. When we unzipped it, there it was. A single MP4 file. No metadata, no time code, nothing. But that wasn't the strangest part. The file's creation date was blank, not just missing, a null entry, like it had never technically been created at all. And the icon thumbnail didn't look like a normal SpongeBob screen cap. It was just static, black and white static frozen into the preview box. We laughed about it at first. Guess Nickelodeon finally made an episode about TV snow, Josh joked. But underneath the jokes, I felt the same unease I'd had when I first saw the name. There was something too clean about it, too deliberate. I've handled plenty of old VHS tapes, and they usually tell a story. Labels peeling, handwriting faded, plastic yellowed with age. But the copy Josh burned to disc for us looked brand new, as if someone wanted to make sure it survived. I told him that, and he shrugged. Who cares if it's weird? This is what we've been waiting for. He wasn't wrong. But I couldn't stop staring at the words sharpied across the disc. SpongeBob episode. Do not watch. The handwriting was jagged, as though scribbled in a rush. Not ironic, not a prank. More like a warning left behind by someone who had already regretted pressing play. That was our second warning. Still, the excitement was stronger than the fear. We cracked jokes, speculated about what it might be. A band skit? An animator's prank? Maybe even one of those morbid training reels you hear about, where studios practice animating violence just to test the tech. Every theory was more ridiculous than the last, but deep down, I think we all felt it. This wasn't like the other rumors. This wasn't just something buried. This was something buried on purpose. And if I'm being honest, it wasn't the tape itself that scared us. It was the warnings we ignored. Josh called me that night, his voice crackling through my cheap speaker. Come on, man. Let's just watch it. What's the worst that could happen? I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell him no. But curiosity doesn't care about your better judgment. Curiosity doesn't wait, so I said, fine, put it in. We slid the disc into the player, the tray swallowing it with a click. The TV stuttered, black screen flickering with static before holding still. The episode had begun. When the screen finally lit up, it almost tricked us into thinking everything was fine. The familiar underwater trumpet fanfare blared from the speakers, and the title card of SpongeBob SquarePants rippled onto the screen in bright blue letters. SpongeBob popped up, waving his hands with that goofy grin plastered across his face, and for the briefest moment, we all laughed in relief. "See?" Josh said, nudging me on the couch. "It's just a lost episode." No big deal, but it wasn't just a lost episode. Even in those opening seconds, something was wrong. The colors looked washed out, like someone had drained the saturation just a notch too far. SpongeBob's normally vibrant yellow skin had this pale, sickly tint, as though he hadn't seen the sun in years. The ocean behind him wasn't the usual turquoise blue either. It was murkier, closer to green-gray, like stagnant pond water. And the theme song. God, the theme song. At first it sounded normal. That sing-songy pirate voice belting out, "Who lives in a pineapple under the sea?" But as the song went on, it started to sound heavier, slower, like the audio track had been dragged down half a pitch. By the time the chorus of children shouted SpongeBob SquarePants, their voices had taken on this warped, almost mechanical quality, like laughter played backward on an old cassette tape. Probably just a bad rip, right? My other friend Kevin said with a nervous chuckle. Like corrupted file or something. I wanted to agree. I really did. But there was something too precise about it. Like the distortions weren't glitches at all, but deliberate. We kept watching. The episode faded into its opening scene. SpongeBob's Pineapple House. The camera panned across the exterior in that same bubbly, upbeat way. But the house looked wrong. The pineapple's orange skin had gone dull and mottled, covered in brown spots like a fruit left rotting on a counter. Inside, SpongeBob was standing in his living room, whistling. Nothing unusual, except the whistle was flat, off-key, and the background sounds that usually filled every SpongeBob episode, bubbles popping, water sloshing, were absent. It was too quiet, uncomfortably quiet. Josh leaned forward, squinting at the screen. "Man, this is eerie, like, it's almost normal but not." I nodded, though I didn't want to admit how unsettled I already felt. It was like looking at a picture of your childhood home and realizing something is slightly off. The curtains a different color, the furniture in the wrong place. Familiarity turned into a weapon. The humor didn't land either. SpongeBob tripped over Gary's food bowl, flopped onto the floor, and laughed that trademark giggle. Normally it would have been infectious, but here, the laugh came out warped, stretched just a little too long, dropping into a lower register before cutting off abruptly. Kevin laughed nervously. "Okay, that's creepy. Tell me you guys heard that, we all did." None of us wanted to say it out loud. Still, we told ourselves it was nothing. Just an old corrupted file? A weird encoding issue. Something explainable. We should have stopped there. But we didn't. Because a part of us, whether we wanted to admit it or not, wanted to see where this was going. That's the danger of forbidden things. The moment you get a taste, the moment you realize something isn't supposed to exist, you have to know why. The episode continued, SpongeBob bouncing to the Krusty Krab for work. The walk cycle was familiar, but slower, stiffer, like frames were missing. The background music was gone completely now. Just silence, punctuated by SpongeBob's rubbery footsteps echoing unnaturally loud, like someone banging wet sponges against concrete. Bad animation, Josh muttered. But his voice had lost its confidence. I tried to laugh, but the sound stuck in my throat, because it didn't feel like bad animation. It felt like intentional sabotage, like someone had taken the blueprint of SpongeBob's joy and twisted it little by little, until it stopped being funny and started being sinister. The moment that really got to me was when SpongeBob pushed open the Krusty Krab doors. Normally there'd be the cheerful ding of the bell. This time there was a low metallic groan, like a door being dragged across rusty hinges. Inside, the restaurant was empty. No Mr. Krabs, no Squidward, no customers. Just bare wooden floors stretching into darkness. SpongeBob stood there in the doorway, blinking. His smile flickered. Not a glitch, not a stutter in the file, but like the animators themselves had drawn his face shifting from cheerfulness into confusion. Josh whispered, "Okay, that's not right." And then came the first real break. The screen flickered. For a split second, SpongeBob's face melted into static, mouth stretching wider than it should, eyes sinking into empty sockets, before snapping back to normal. It was quick. Too quick to freeze frame, but all three of us saw it. We sat there frozen, waiting for someone to say, "I didn't see anything." No one did. The air in the room had gone heavy, like the tape was leaching something out of us. My skin prickled with goosebumps. That should have been the end. We should have stopped the disc right there, tossed it out, and never spoken of it again. But instead, we leaned closer. We let it play. And that's when the first truly disturbing scene began. The shift wasn't gradual this time. It was sudden. 1 second, SpongeBob was walking across the empty Krusty Krab, his rubbery footsteps echoing unnaturally loud. The next, the scene just stopped. No fade, no transition. Just a hard cut to SpongeBob sitting in the middle of his living room. Except he wasn't moving. He wasn't doing anything at all. He just sat there, cross-legged on the floor, staring directly into the camera. At first, we waited for him to speak. Some dumb line, a goofy pun, anything. But he didn't. The silence stretched on, longer than it should have. Way longer. The laugh track that usually bubbled in the background of almost every SpongeBob episode. Even the faint hum of ocean ambiance had vanished. The only sound was something new, something faint, like static. And maybe I imagined it. But buried underneath that static, I swear I heard something else. Something like crying. Distant, muffled, like it was leaking in from another room. Josh shifted uncomfortably on the couch. When's he gonna talk?" "He's not supposed to just sit there," Kevin muttered. "This isn't right." I didn't answer, because my eyes were locked on SpongeBob's face. He blinked once, and when he did, his eyes weren't cartoon anymore. For the briefest moment, they looked real, human eyes. Bloodshot, glassy, with tiny red veins spiderwebbing across the whites. And then he blinked again, and they were back to their usual round, goofy selves. It was quick, too quick. But I know what I saw. "Tell me you guys saw that," I whispered. Josh just shook his head, muttering, Nah, bad file. It's just bad file corruption." But he didn't sound convinced. Kevin leaned forward, staring hard at the screen. "No, it's there. If you pause at the right frame, you'll see it. There's something wrong with his eyes. We didn't dare rewind. We just kept watching." The scene dragged on, SpongeBob still sitting motionless, staring into the camera. It must have gone on for at least 2 full minutes. No dialogue, no cuts. Just him, watching. And then, right at the edge of the frame, something shifted. It was subtle, just a blur of movement behind him, like someone walking past a doorway in the background. But the living room was supposed to be empty. And when I leaned closer, squinting, the blur looked too tall. Too thin, I swear, I whispered, my throat dry. If you freeze frame at the right moment, you can see something behind him. The static grew louder. The crying, too. Not clearer, just closer. Kevin actually reached for the remote. His thumb hovered over the stop button, but Josh grabbed his wrist. "No," he said firmly, though his voice cracked. "We keep watching. We have to see how far this goes." We all knew it was a mistake. But none of us stopped him, because by then it wasn't about entertainment anymore. It wasn't even about curiosity. It was about needing to know what we'd stumbled into, needing to know how deep it went. And the episode wasn't done with us yet. The screen flickered and SpongeBob finally moved. But instead of speaking, instead of laughing, he tilted his head. Just slightly. The sound of static spiked, shrill and grating, like feedback from a broken microphone. Then, cut to black. For a full 5 seconds, nothing. Just black screen. And when the picture returned, the world of Bikini Bottom was no longer bright or cheery. The skies were a sickly gray-green. The water around the houses murky and dead, littered with floating debris. The familiar background characters, fish that usually filled the town, were gone. The streets were empty, lifeless. Even the colors had dulled further. No warmth, no vibrancy, just decay. Josh whispered what we were all thinking. Bikini Bottom looks dead, and yet we didn't turn it off. We leaned in closer, silent, waiting for whatever came next. At first, thought it was just my imagination. The episode had shifted again. No transition, no logic, just another jarring cut. SpongeBob wasn't on the screen anymore. Instead, it was an establishing shot of a street, not just any street. It looked familiar. The cracked pavement, the crooked lamppost, the way the trees leaned in like they were listening. It looked exactly like the block I grew up on. Wait, hold up, pause, I said, leaning forward. Josh grabbed the remote, but when he hit pause, nothing happened. The tape kept playing as if mocking the command. Kevin laughed nervously. Okay, that's uncanny. Maybe it's just generic. A lot of streets look like that. But I knew it wasn't. There was no mistaking the slanted stop sign at the corner, or the peeling paint on the telephone pole. That was my street. The camera zoomed in slowly as though the episode wanted to prove me right. Frame by frame, it drew closer to the window of a house at the end of the block. My house, and then Squidward's voice, nasal and flat, filled the speakers. But he wasn't speaking to SpongeBob. He wasn't even speaking in dialogue. He was speaking to us. Why are you watching this? We froze. None of us said anything. The voice had been too clear, too intentional. Not a glitch, not some corrupted audio file. He had spoken to us. Josh's hands shook as he dropped the remote onto the floor. Nope, I'm out. Turn it off, man. Turn it the hell off. But the screen wouldn't let us. SpongeBob appeared again, but not in Bikini Bottom. He was standing on that same street. My street. And in the background, behind the distorted, washed-out cartoon houses, you could see figures. Blurred silhouettes that looked like people. Like neighbors, and then whispers, not the static, not the crying. This was different. This was closer. It was voices, calling our names, first mine, then Kevin's, then Josh's. One by one, clear as day, woven into the warped ocean ambience. We all jerked back like we'd been shocked. Turn it off, Josh shouted, grabbing for the power button on the TV. He hit it again and again, but the screen stayed on. The picture flickered and Squidward appeared in close-up. But his eyes were hollow, pits of black, his mouth trembling as though it was struggling to form words. He leaned closer to the camera, closer, until it felt like he was leaning into our room. And then he whispered, in a voice that sounded far too human, "You shouldn't be here." Kevin swore under his breath, stumbling to his feet. "This isn't just a tape, man. This isn't just some creepypasta crap. It knows us, but we didn't stop watching. Because something deep in our guts told us that if we quit now, if we pulled the plug, we'd never know what this thing really was. And worse, that maybe it wouldn't end just because we looked away." I swallowed hard, unable to tear my eyes from the screen. "But if we had stopped," I whispered, "we never would have seen what came next." Josh whirled around, panicked. "Are you hearing yourself right now? This thing's calling our names, showing your freaking house. What more do you need?" But before anyone could answer, the screen glitched. The footage fast-forwarded violently, scenes blurring together in a smear of colors and distorted sounds, like the tape was trying to rush us through. Kevin lunged for the remote, desperate to stop it. He pressed fast forward, then rewind, then pause. But the tape resisted, almost fighting back. Every button press just made the static grow louder, and then the images slowed again, landing on a single frame, a still shot of the three of us, not cartoon versions, not stylized, real. It was us sitting on the couch, watching the TV, exactly as we were in that moment. Kevin dropped the remote like it had burned him. Josh's voice cracked, high and thin. What the hell is this?" I couldn't answer, because deep down I already knew. It wasn't SpongeBob on the screen anymore, it was us. The tape should have ended. By all logic, by all reason, there was no more episode to play. But the screen flickered once, twice, and then something new began. At first, it looked like the familiar transition card, the cheery ukulele strum, the bright title cards we all remembered from watching Nickelodeon after school. But the colors were wrong, oversaturated, bleeding into each other like watercolors dropped in acid. The jaunty text was smeared, unreadable, like someone had written it in chalk and then dragged their nails across it. And then the laughter started. Not SpongeBob's laugh. The bubbling, goofy cackle everyone knows. This was children's laughter. Dozens of them. High-pitched, layered, overlapping. For a second it almost sounded playful. But the longer it went on, the more it bent out of shape. The giggles pitched lower, warped, until they no longer sounded human. They sounded like screams. Kevin whispered, "This isn't an episode. This isn't anything Nickelodeon would have touched." The scene cut hard to a shot of the Krusty Krab. At least, that's what it was supposed to be. The building was collapsing in on itself. Its wooden planks warped and rotting, the sign dangling by a single nail. The inside was dark, cavernous, and every time the frame stuttered, you could see brief flashes of something on the walls. Not menus. Not nautical decorations, symbols, circles within circles, jagged lines. Something that almost looked like writing, but too alien to read. And then SpongeBob shuffled into frame. But this wasn't SpongeBob. Not the sponge I grew up with. His body was stretched, as if someone had pulled him like taffy. His limbs dragged unnaturally, bending at impossible angles. His eyes, oh God, his eyes. They weren't cartoon anymore, they were human, bloodshot, wet, blinking too slowly, too deliberately. Josh cursed and covered his face with his sleeve. No, I'm not watching this. I'm not. But his voice cut off when SpongeBob turned, not to another character, not to the setting, to us, straight into the camera. We all flinched back at once. It was like being caught staring at something you were never supposed to see. His gaze followed no matter where we shifted on the couch, those disturbingly human eyes tracking each of us, one by one. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't even blink. On screen, the scene changed again. Now it was Sandy's tree dome, only the glass was cracked, water seeping in. Inside her body floated limp, helmet shattered. Except when the camera zoomed closer, she twitched. Not dead, not alive. Something in between. Her mouth opened, and instead of her voice, it was that chorus of distorted children again, screaming through the speakers. "This was never made for kids," I whispered, my voice shaking. Kevin nodded, pale as paper. "It wasn't even made for us." The tape glitched, cutting from location to location. Squidward in his house slamming his head against a window. The frame jump-cutting so quickly you could see the cracks forming in his skull. Mr. Krabs sitting in an empty room, claws twitching, whispering words too garbled to understand. Patrick smiling wide, too wide, his teeth sharp, human, his gums dripping dark red. The imagery wasn't random. It wasn't silly. It was deliberate, ritualistic. Like the tape was performing something. A sequence. A rite. We sat frozen, horrified, but unable to look away. The screen pulsed with static, almost breathing, as though it were alive. And through it all, those human eyes, watching us from SpongeBob's warped, grotesque face, never blinked. No one touched the remote this time. No one even dared to move. The tape kept playing. At first I thought it was just me, just the adrenaline, the sick churn of watching something we weren't meant to see. But then the living room lights flickered. Once, twice, like someone was playing with a dimmer switch we didn't have. Josh muttered, "Power surge?" But his voice was paper thin, trying to sound casual. Kevin didn't answer. He was staring at the screen, his lips moving soundlessly. On screen, SpongeBob had stopped moving. His warped face was frozen mid-smile, eyes locked on us. The static behind him hissed louder now, like a waterfall pouring through broken speakers. And then my phone buzzed. It buzzed so violently it rattled across the coffee table. Unknown number. I glanced at my friends, then back at the screen. Against every instinct, I swiped to answer. What came through wasn't a voice. It was his laugh, SpongeBob's laugh. But wrong, slower, warped, layered over itself until it became something guttural and wet, echoing in my ear like someone choking on water. I dropped the phone. "It's him," I whispered. The TV snapped to black for a heartbeat. When the picture came back, the Krusty Krab was gone. Now it was a static shot of a living room. Our living room. Exact same couch, same crooked lamp, even the same empty soda cans on the table. Kevin's breath hitched. "It knows we're here," Josh swore under his breath. "Turn it off. Turn it off now." He lunged for the remote, but the tape hissed, the sound spiking into a shrill whine that made our teeth ache. The screen flickered, our living room on screen, but emptier. No us, just the furniture.
The edge of the frame moved. A shadow, small, rectangular, sponge-like. I stared, nails digging into my palms. "That is here," I whispered. "That is right here." The temperature dropped. Not figuratively. I saw my breath fogging in front of me. Kevin wiped at his nose, then froze, staring at his hand. Blood smeared across his knuckles. Josh backed up until he hit the wall. "This is not just a tape." He did not finish the thought because the screen changed again. SpongeBob appeared in close-up. So close you could see every grotesque pore and every tremor of his human eyes. His mouth moved but no sound came out. Then faintly layered under the static I heard a whisper. Not a cartoon line. Not anything I should have recognized. My name. That was the moment I realized it was not just an episode. It was a message. The static surged. The VCR whined as though straining against something. Josh yanked at the eject button again and again, but it refused to budge. He slammed his palm against the player, begging it to stop. The lights flickered. Darkness, then flare. On screen, the living room feed was gone. Only black remained, except for two faint glowing dots like eyes in the center. I swallowed hard, tasting metal in the back of my throat. We were inside it now, and it was not letting go. The screen warped. White lines slashed across SpongeBob's body. I thought the tape had finally given out. Then his face filled the entire screen. Not cartoon SpongeBob. Not even the warped parody we had seen before. This was worse. A grotesque hybrid of flesh and sponge. The texture shifted in and out like a bad dream. His grin stretched too wide. His teeth were human, gleaming, wet. He spoke, not squeaky, not funny, low, guttural, too close. You will be next. The words vibrated through the floorboards. Kevin whimpered, curling into himself on the couch. Josh whispered no again and again like a prayer, but SpongeBob kept going. He laughed, slow, dragging, pitch bent until it sounded inhuman. Under that laugh came words. Our words. He repeated things we had said earlier. Kevin's joke about cursed SpongeBob. Josh mocking my paranoia about lost media. Even my own laugh when I called the tape probably just a bad rip. He was parroting us, mocking us. Then he went deeper. Kevin's full name. Josh's address. My middle name. Things he should not know. Then he whispered about my dreams, drowning, teeth. Things I had never told anyone. He paused. His human eyes blinked. You hide things, he said. You all hide things. He listed them. Each one, secrets we had buried. Mistakes never spoken. Every sentence pulled the air out of the room. Kevin shook. Josh almost ran for the door. I could not move, and then silence. The sound cut out mid-word. The room was still. The ringing in my ears was louder than any static. On screen, SpongeBob's mouth still moved. Open, close, open, close. But no sound came. His teeth gleamed. His eyes never blinked. The image stuttered. Broken memories of Bikini Bottom flashed by. The Krusty Krab collapsing, Squidward's skull cracking, Sandy's limp body, Patrick's impossible grin. Then static. Josh moved first. He dived for the VCR. The eject button clicked. The tape spat itself out. He grabbed it with trembling hands, ready to smash it. But when we looked again, the tape was blank. The label that once read SpongeBob episode Do Not Watch was gone. The ink had vanished, Kevin whispered. The worst part, we were not the first ones to see it. The static lingered a moment longer, then the screen went black. The episode was over. Or it pretended to be. We sat in silence. The room smelled of ozone and dust like a storm had passed. Josh cursed, grabbed the tape, and stormed out. Later, he smashed it with a hammer, broke it into pieces, buried them in his yard, and deleted everything. Erase it, he texted. Pretend it never happened. Kevin did the opposite. He searched forums and archives. He tracked old interns. He hunted for more. Then he stopped answering our calls. His last message to me was a photo. SpongeBob's face. Not the cartoon. The other one. That was when things started happening to me. Dreams of sinking in the ocean. Laughter muffled by water. Teeth in the dark. eyes watching as I drowned, then waking life. A shadow beside mine on the sidewalk, round, sponge-like, gone when I turned, calls from no ID numbers, only static. Then that laugh, emails with attachments, frames of the tape, still images of SpongeBob's face. Sometimes if I stared too long, the image blinked. Josh was wrong. Smashing it did not destroy it. It was in us now. Others contacted me. Anonymous posts, emails, DMs, they claimed they saw it too. Some years ago. Some said they worked at Nickelodeon. They all said the same thing. It does not stay gone. Kevin searched until it consumed him. Josh pretends it never happened. And me, I hover between fear and obsession. I tell myself writing this is a warning. But the truth is, I do not know if telling spreads the infection. Because every time I write or speak about it, I hear the laugh again. Faint, wet, closer. The static grows louder now. It always does when I talk about the tape, like it knows, so listen. If you find a tape that looks wrong, if you see SpongeBob's eyes staring too long, if the air changes while you watch, stop. Do not let it play. Once it starts, it does not stop. And if you are watching this, maybe it is already too late. This is not the end. I wish it was. But the truth is darker. There are more. Other tapes. Other episodes. Whispers of them buried in vaults. This was only the beginning. Once you have seen the first one, the others start finding you, and once they find you, you do not get to stop watching.